The medical bay smelled like burnt circuits and recycled air. Riley pressed her palm against the cool metal wall, watching through the observation window as doctors worked on wounded soldiers from a dozen different species. Green blood mixed with blue on the sterile floors. Purple crystalline beings lay motionless on specialized beds. The war against the Void Swarm had cost them everything, but they won. At least that's what everyone kept saying. Admiral Torren's voice echoed through the ship's communication system, calling all senior staff to the main assembly hall. Riley pulled her uniform straight and headed toward the celebration. She was just a communications officer, barely 23 Earth years old, and the newest member of the Galactic Coalition. Humans had joined only 6 months ago, offering scout ships and supply runs while the real warriors fought the actual battles. The assembly hall buzzed with excited voices speaking in languages her translator chip struggled to process. Torren stood at the center, his 4 arms raised high in victory. His species, the Etherans, were natural leaders, tall and covered in silver scales that reflected the overhead lights. Around him, representatives from 12 species shared drinks and stories about the final battle. A reptilian commander named Solth hissed proudly about how his battle group destroyed 3 swarm hive ships before losing half their vessels. A floating gas being called Morpheus pulsed different colors while describing the sacrifice of their carrier fleet. Everyone had lost something. Everyone had a story of heroism and death. Riley found a quiet corner and activated her personal data pad. The casualty reports made her stomach turn. 60% of the Coalition fleet destroyed, 200,000 lives lost, entire species reduced to handfuls of survivors. But the swarm's central hive cluster was gone, burned away by nuclear fire and plasma weapons. The threat was over. The human delegation seems quiet tonight, Torren approached with a drink that smelled like fermented fruit. You should celebrate with us. Your supply ships kept our fighters fueled during the darkest days. Riley forced a smile. We're honored to have helped, Admiral. Helped, Torren laughed, a sound like grinding stones. Your people are too modest, though I must admit I expected more from Earth. The legends about your world suggested a more aggressive species. Before Riley could respond, her communication implant vibrated with an incoming priority message. She touched her temple, activating the receiver. The voice of Commander Walsh from Earth Command came through clear and urgent. Officer Riley, authorization code Crimson 7 Alpha. Relay the following message to Coalition leadership immediately. Earth Command requests permission to deploy reinforcements to current coordinates. Repeat, Earth requests permission to deploy reinforcements. Riley's face went pale. Her hands started shaking. Torren noticed immediately, his celebration smile fading into concern. What's wrong? Has something happened to Earth? Riley looked up at the towering admiral, then at the celebrating crowd behind him. They had no idea. None of them knew what Earth had been building in the darkness beyond their telescopes. She cleared her throat and spoke loud enough for nearby officers to hear. Admiral Torren, I've received a priority communication from Earth Command. They're requesting permission to deploy reinforcements to this sector. The conversations around them died slowly, like a wave moving through the hall. Officers turned to stare. Solth slithered closer, his forked tongue testing the air. Morpheus stopped pulsing and settled into a deep red color that indicated confusion. Torren's expression shifted from concern to bewilderment. Reinforcements. Riley, with all respect to your people, we've just won the war. The swarm is destroyed. What reinforcements could Earth possibly send that would matter now? I don't have details, sir. Just the request for deployment authorization. Another coalition officer, an insectoid named Trill, clicked his mandibles in what Riley had learned was their version of laughter. Perhaps they're sending more cargo haulers. We could use help cleaning up the debris field. Others joined in the gentle mockery. Humans were new to the galactic stage, their technology decades behind coalition standards. Their military consisted of small defense fleets that barely qualified as corvettes by galactic measurements. The idea of Earth sending meaningful reinforcements seemed almost childish. But Riley had seen the classified files. She'd heard the whispers in Earth Command. She knew what was coming, and it terrified her as much as it filled her with pride. Torin waved his hand dismissively. "Tell your commanders they have permission to send whatever ships they wish. We can always use extra hands for the rebuilding effort." He turned back to the celebration, already forgetting the conversation. Riley sent the confirmation code back to Earth Command and tried to steady her breathing. 3 days. In 3 days, the Galactic Coalition would learn that humanity had been very, very quiet about their true capabilities. In 3 days, everything would change. She looked out the massive viewport at the debris field floating in space, the remains of hundreds of destroyed ships from both sides of the battle. The stars beyond looked peaceful, completely unaware of the storm that was about to arrive from Sol's system. Riley whispered to herself, too quiet for anyone else to hear. They have no idea what's coming. The celebration continued around her, voices raised in victory songs and promises of peace. But Riley couldn't shake the feeling that this war wasn't over. And when Earth's real fleet arrived, the galaxy would finally understand why humanity had been so careful, so patient, so quiet. Deep space sensors screamed warnings 3 days later. Riley was in her quarters, trying to sleep when the alert pulled her from dreams of Earth's oceans. She grabbed her uniform and ran toward the bridge, her heart pounding against her ribs. The bridge was chaos. Officers shouted coordinates and energy readings while Torin stood at the command console, his silver scales darkened with stress. Every screen showed the same thing: massive energy signatures emerging from slipspace, far larger than anything in the Coalition database. "Battle stations," Torin commanded. "All fighters launch immediately, defensive formations around the medical ships." Solth's voice came through the communication system, sharp with panic. "Admiral, these readings don't match swarm signatures. The energy output is off the scale. Whatever's coming through is bigger than their hive ships." Riley pushed through the crowded bridge to her station. She knew exactly what was happening, but protocol demanded she check Earth Command frequencies first. The message waiting for her was simple: package delivered. Stand by. The first ship emerged from slipspace like a mountain tearing through reality. It was gray and angular, covered in armor plating that looked thick enough to stop a planet. Weapon ports lined its hull in rows, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The ship was easily 3 times the size of Torin's flagship. Then the second one appeared, and a third, and a fourth. 7 massive vessels materialized in total, arranging themselves in a protective formation around the Coalition fleet. Riley watched the bridge crew freeze, their alien faces showing the universal expression of shock. Even Morpheus lost his usual color shifts and turned a pale white. "What are those?" Trill whispered, his mandibles clicking nervously. Riley activated her communication panel and sent the standard Coalition greeting frequency. The response came immediately, and she routed it through the main speakers for everyone to hear. "This is Admiral Hayes of the Earth Defense Force, commanding the Dreadnought Titan. We received authorization to deploy reinforcements, requesting permission to establish defensive perimeter." The voice was calm, professional, completely unbothered by the stunned silence that followed. Torin found his voice first, though it came out rough and uncertain. "Admiral Hayes, this is Admiral Torin of the Coalition flagship Brightness. Your vessels are unexpected. We were not informed Earth possessed ships of this size." "That was intentional, Admiral. Earth Command prefers to observe before committing strategic assets. We've been monitoring the swarm conflict since it began. Now that we understand the threat parameters, we're ready to assist." Riley pulled up the technical data flowing from the Dreadnoughts. The numbers made no sense. Power output registered higher than some Coalition space stations. Armor density exceeded anything in the materials database. And the weapons. There were weapon systems listed that she didn't even recognize. Solth slithered up beside Torin, his voice low and angry. They held back. We lost 60% of our fleet and they held back these ships. Hayes must have heard him because her response came sharp and clear. Commander Solth, we held back because deploying unknown assets into an unknown situation is how you lose wars. Earth doesn't waste resources on assumptions. We needed to understand the enemy first, study their tactics, analyze their weaknesses. Now we know what we're fighting. The swarm is destroyed, Torin said, his four arms spreading in a gesture of completion. The war is over. With respect, Admiral, our analysis suggests otherwise. Long-range probes detected anomalous energy signatures in the dead systems where the swarm originated. We believe you destroyed a forward colony, not their main force. The bridge went silent again. Riley watched the color drain from Torin's scales. He pulled up long-range sensor data, comparing it against Earth readings. After several long minutes, he slumped against his console. Confirmed. There are energy spikes in the outer rim, similar to swarm signatures but stronger. He looked at the screen showing Hayes' Dreadnought. Why didn't your people warn us before we celebrated? We did. Officer Riley transmitted our concerns to Coalition intelligence 2 days ago. Your analysts dismissed it as human paranoia. Riley winced. She had sent the report, but nobody took it seriously. Humans were too new, too primitive to understand galactic-scale threats. At least that's what the senior analysts told her. Torin pulled himself straight, his natural dignity returning. Admiral Hayes, on behalf of the Coalition, I apologize for our dismissal of your intelligence, and I thank you for coming, regardless of our mistakes. Apology accepted, Admiral. Now we should discuss defensive strategies. If our projections are correct, the main swarm fleet will arrive within 72 hours, and they'll be significantly larger than the force you just defeated. The Dreadnoughts moved into position around the Coalition fleet with surprising grace for such massive ships. Riley watched them on the tactical display, 7 gray mountains floating in space, each one bristling with weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. A young engineer approached Riley's station, his 6 eyes all focused on her. How long has Earth been building these? Riley thought about the classified briefings she'd received before joining the Coalition. 20 years, since we first detected signs of interstellar life. Earth Command decided that if we were going to join the galaxy, we needed to be able to protect ourselves and protect others. They're incredible, the engineer breathed. The power systems alone could revolutionize our technology. They're also secret, Riley said quietly. Until now, only a handful of humans knew these ships existed. My government kept them hidden because revealing your full strength too early is a good way to start wars you don't want. Morpheus drifted closer, his gaseous form pulsing with curious yellow light. But you revealed them now. Why? Riley looked at the Dreadnoughts on the screen, then at the damaged Coalition ships limping through space around them. Because now you need them. And because humanity learned a long time ago that having the biggest weapons doesn't matter if you're not willing to use them to protect others. Admiral Hayes' voice came through again. All ships, this is Titan. We're deploying long-range sensor drones to monitor the outer rim approaches. Coalition vessels should focus on repairs and crew rest. If the swarm returns, you'll need to be ready. Titan out. Torin looked at Riley with new respect in his ancient eyes. Your species is full of surprises, Officer Riley. Riley smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She was thinking about what was coming, about the massive fleet that Earth's probes had detected. The Dreadnoughts were impressive, but even 7 of these monsters might not be enough. Admiral, she said quietly, I hope you're ready, because the real war is about to begin. The sensor alarm started as a low hum, then built into a shriek that made Riley cover her ears. Around her, the bridge crew scrambled to their stations while Torin's scales flashed dark blue with fear. The main screen lit up with hundreds of red dots emerging from the dead systems, each one representing a swarm vessel. "Count them," Torin ordered, his voice steady despite the terror in his eyes. 573 confirmed contacts, an analyst reported. More still emerging. Energy signatures indicate capital-class bioships, at least 40 of them. Riley felt her stomach drop. The Coalition fleet had barely survived fighting against 100 swarm ships. This was 5 times that number, and most Coalition vessels were still damaged from the first battle. She watched Torin's 4 hands grip the edge of his console hard enough to bend the metal. "Launch all remaining fighters. Signal all ships to form defensive sphere formation. Medical vessels to the center." Torin turned to his communication officer. "Send a message to all Coalition worlds. Tell them we fought bravely. Tell them." "Admiral Torin, this is Hayes. We're detecting the incoming fleet. Request you hold defensive positions while we analyze their formation." Torin's voice came out sharp. "Admiral Hayes, with respect, analysis time is a luxury we don't have. That fleet will be in weapons range in 20 minutes. "Understood, but fighting without information is how you lose battles. Give us 10 minutes. Riley pulled up the tactical feed from the Dreadnoughts. She could see them moving, not into defensive positions, but spreading out in a wide arc facing the approaching swarm. Strange energy readings pulsed from their hulls as internal systems activated. Salth appeared on the communication screen, his reptilian face twisted with anger. "Torin, we should retreat. Pull back to the fortified systems, regroup our forces. We can't win this fight." "Run where?" Torin asked quietly. "They've already consumed 3 systems. How many more before we run out of space to flee? How many worlds do we abandon?" Other Coalition captains joined the channel, all saying the same thing. "Retreat. Preserve what remains. Live to fight another day." Riley understood their fear. She felt it too, coiling in her chest like a living thing. But she also remembered the classified files about the Dreadnoughts, about what they were designed to do. Admiral Hayes' voice cut through the arguing. "Coalition leadership, this is Earth Command. We've completed our analysis. The Swarm fleet has a critical vulnerability in their coordination network. The big bioships act as command nodes, but they need to synchronize every 60 seconds to maintain fleet cohesion. During that synchronization window, their smaller vessels lose directive control." "We analyzed the swarm for months," Trill protested. "Our best tactical computers found no such weakness." "Your computers were looking for technological vulnerabilities. We looked for biological ones. Earth's history includes extensive experience with hive organisms. Ants, bees, termites. They all have coordination weaknesses during information transfer." Torin studied the tactical display, his scientific mind already seeing the pattern Hayes described. "Even if this weakness exists, we don't have the firepower to exploit it. Those bioships have organic armor 3 meters thick." "You don't need to destroy them, Admiral. You need to disrupt them. The Dreadnoughts will draw the swarm's attention. While they're focused on us, Coalition strike teams can hit the bioships during their synchronization windows. Precision attacks on their neural clusters." Riley pulled up the formation Hayes was proposing. It was insane. The 7 Dreadnoughts would advance directly into the swarm fleet, deliberately making themselves targets while the smaller Coalition vessels performed surgical strikes. It meant the Dreadnoughts would face the full force of the swarm alone. "Your ships will be torn apart," Torin said, disbelief clear in his voice. "No, Admiral, our ships were built specifically to not be torn apart. Earth doesn't do things halfway. When we decided to build warships, we studied every conflict in galactic history. We learned from everyone's mistakes." Hayes paused. "But we need the Coalition fleet to trust us. Can you do that?" The command channel fell silent. Riley watched Torin close his eyes, his scales shifting through colors as he processed the decision. Finally, he opened his eyes and straightened to his full height. All Coalition ships, this is Admiral Torin. We're following Earth's tactical plan. Strike groups form up on my signal. Target the bioships during their coordination windows only. Do not engage outside those windows. Solth's hiss came through sharp and clear. You're trusting our survival to humans who hid their capabilities until now. I'm trusting our survival to the only species offering a plan that doesn't involve running away, Torin replied. Prepare for combat. The swarm fleet drew closer, a wall of organic ships that blocked out the stars. Riley could see them on the visual feed now, massive things that looked like they were grown rather than built. Their hulls pulsed with bioluminescence, and smaller attack vessels swarmed around them like angry insects. The Dreadnoughts accelerated forward, their gray hulls reflecting no light as they moved into position. Riley noticed something strange about their formation. They weren't trying to spread the swarm's attention. They were clustering together, making themselves a single massive target. "Hayes, what are you doing?" Torin asked, fear creeping into his voice. Drawing their interest. Swarm tactics prioritize the largest threat first. They'll focus on us, which means your strike teams will have clear approaches to the bioships. The first swarm vessels opened fire, streams of organic projectiles that glowed green with acidic compounds. The projectiles hit the lead Dreadnought's shields and splashed harmlessly against them. More swarm ships joined the attack, then dozens more, until the space around the Dreadnoughts filled with hostile fire. "They're getting swarmed," Trill said, his voice breaking. "We need to help them." "Hold position," Torin ordered. "Trust the plan." Riley's hands shook as she monitored the Dreadnought's status. Their shields were holding, but the sheer volume of fire was incredible. Then something changed. The Dreadnoughts stopped moving defensively and opened fire. The bridge crew gasped collectively. Weapons Riley had never seen before lit up space with blue-white fury. Railguns launched projectiles that punched through swarm vessels like they were made of paper. Plasma lances carved burning lines through the bioship's organic armor. And something else, massive kinetic impactors that didn't just destroy ships but shattered them into fragments. A single dreadnought destroyed 12 swarm cruisers in less than 4 minutes. The swarm tried to overwhelm them with numbers, throwing wave after wave of attack vessels against the human ships. But the dreadnoughts were designed for exactly this kind of fight. Their armor absorbed hits that would have crippled Coalition vessels. Their weapons fired faster than anything in the galactic arsenal. "Coordination window opening in 10 seconds, Hayes announced calmly, as if she wasn't in the middle of the most intense battle Riley had ever witnessed. "All strike teams, execute now." Coalition fighters and corvettes shot forward, weaving through the chaos toward the massive bioships. Riley held her breath as they approached the neural clusters Hayes had identified, firing their weapons into the exposed biological systems. The bioships convulsed. Their bioluminescence flickered and died. And across the swarm fleet, hundreds of smaller vessels suddenly stopped coordinated movement and began drifting aimlessly. "It worked," Torin breathed. "By the ancestors, it actually worked." But Riley was watching something else on her screen. Deep in the rear of the swarm formation, a ship 3 times larger than the others was moving forward, and the confused swarm vessels were starting to reorganize around it. The massive command ship emerged from behind the swarm formation like a disease made solid. Its hull was dark purple, almost black, covered in what looked like veins that pulsed with sickly green light. Riley's sensors struggled to measure it accurately, but preliminary readings suggested it was nearly 8 kilometers long. "All ships new contact," she reported, trying to keep her voice steady. "Designating it Command Alpha, it's pulling the swarm back into formation." Torin watched his tactical display update in real time. The confused swarm vessels that had been drifting moments ago were now moving with purpose again, reorganizing into attack patterns around the massive command ship. Hayes, are you seeing this? Confirmed, Torin. The swarm adapted faster than our models predicted. That ship is maintaining network cohesion across the entire fleet. As long as it's operational, our strike tactics won't work. Salth's battle group had just finished destroying a cluster of bioships when the reformed swarm turned on them. His voice came through strained and desperate. They're coordinating again. My shields are failing. I need support. 3 dreadnoughts shifted position, their weapons lighting up space as they carved a path through swarm vessels to reach Salth's ships. Riley watched the rescue operation with amazement. The dreadnoughts moved like they were dancing, each one covering the others while maintaining devastating fire. They pulled Salth's damaged vessels back behind their protective formation. "Thank you," Salth gasped. "I've never seen ships move like that." "Earth naval doctrine emphasizes mutual protection," Hayes replied. "We don't leave anyone behind." But the swarm was learning too. The command ship hung back, using the smaller vessels as shields while it coordinated attacks from a distance. Every time the coalition strike teams tried to approach, waves of swarm fighters drove them back. The battle was turning into a stalemate, and the coalition fleet was running out of ammunition. Riley pulled up damage reports. Coalition vessels were reporting critical systems failures across the board. The medical ships were overflowing with casualties. Even the dreadnoughts were showing stress indicators, their shields flickering under the constant bombardment. "Admiral Hayes," Torin said quietly, "we can't sustain this. If we continue, we'll lose everything." Hayes was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. The professional calm was gone, replaced with something harder, sadder. "There's one option. The Valiant can perform a kinetic plunge." The bridge went completely silent. Riley searched her database for the term, but it wasn't in any coalition military records. "What's a kinetic plunge?" "It's a last resort tactic," Hayes explained. "The ship accelerates to maximum velocity and performs a direct collision strike. At point 4 light speed, the kinetic energy is sufficient to destroy any target. But the crew needs to evacuate first, and the ship's captain has to stay behind to maintain course." Torin's scales went completely white. "You're talking about suicide." "I'm talking about winning. That command ship needs to be destroyed, and this is the only way to guarantee it." Hayes paused. "Captain Bishop of the Valiant has volunteered. His crew is already moving to escape pods." Riley felt tears burning in her eyes. She pulled up the Valiant's profile. It was one of the 7 dreadnoughts, commanded by a man named Bishop who had 40 years of service in Earth's defense forces. A man who was about to die to save species he'd only known for 6 months. "Hayes, there must be another way," Torin pleaded. "Don't ask your people to make this sacrifice for us." "I'm not asking, Admiral. Bishop made this choice himself. Every captain in the dreadnought fleet volunteered when they signed up. We knew what these ships were for." Hayes' voice softened slightly. "Besides, you do the same for us. That's what the coalition means, isn't it? Standing together even when it costs everything." On the tactical display, the Valiant broke formation and began accelerating toward the command ship. Riley could see escape pods launching from its hull, tiny dots of light carrying the crew to safety. But one life sign remained on the bridge. Bishop's voice came through the communication system, calm and almost peaceful. "This is Captain Bishop to all ships. It's been an honor serving with you. Tell my family I love them. Tell Earth Command the dreadnoughts performed perfectly." He paused. "And tell the swarm that humanity doesn't forgive threats to innocent life." The Valiant's engines burned brighter than stars as it accelerated. The swarm seemed to understand what was happening. Hundreds of vessels moved to intercept, firing everything they had at the approaching dreadnought. But Bishop had already disabled most systems, routing all power to engines and structural integrity. Swarm projectiles hit the Valiant's armor and bounced off. Energy beams scored deep gouges in its hull, but the ship kept accelerating. Riley watched the velocity readings climb. Point 0.1 light speed, point 0.2, point 0.3. All ships clear the impact zone, Hayes ordered. Get behind debris fields or planets, now. The Coalition fleet scattered, moving as fast as their damaged engines could manage. Riley felt her ship shudder as they pushed the engines beyond safety limits. Through the viewport, she could see the Valiant, now just a streak of gray against the black, aimed directly at the command ship's center mass. Bishop's final transmission came through, his voice steady. For Earth, for the Coalition, for everyone who can't fight back. The Valiant hit the command ship at point 0.4 light speed. Riley had seen nuclear explosions before in training simulations. She'd watched videos of antimatter weapons tests. Nothing prepared her for this. The impact released so much energy that it created a temporary microstar, a ball of fusion fire that expanded outward in a perfect sphere. The command ship didn't break apart. It simply ceased to exist, atomized in a fraction of a second. The shockwave rolled outward, destroying swarm vessels by the dozens. The light was so bright that Riley's screen automatically darkened to protect her eyes. When it cleared, an expanding cloud of plasma marked where the command ship had been. And across the entire swarm fleet, every ship stopped moving. Their coordination was gone, destroyed with their command node. They drifted in space like dead things, their bioluminescence fading to nothing. All strike teams destroy the remaining vessels, Torin ordered, his voice thick with emotion. Don't let Bishop's sacrifice be wasted. The Coalition fleet moved forward, their weapons finding easy targets in the confused swarm ships. It wasn't a battle anymore, it was cleanup. Within 30 minutes, the last swarm vessel was destroyed, its burning hull joining the debris field that filled the space around them. Victory, at the cost of 800 human lives aboard the Valiant. Riley looked at the empty space where the Dreadnought had been and cried. Around her, the bridge crew was silent, even the species who had mocked humanity days ago. They'd all just witnessed what humans were willing to sacrifice for others. The debris field sparkled with frozen crystals of oxygen and water, remnants of destroyed ships from both sides. Riley floated in zero gravity inside the observation bay, watching repair crews work on damaged Coalition vessels. 3 days had passed since the battle, and she still couldn't process what happened. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the Valiant's final approach, that streak of gray determination heading toward certain death. Behind her, voices echoed through the corridor as crews prepared the memorial hall. Representatives from every Coalition species had arrived to honor the Valiant's crew. Riley had helped coordinate the ceremony, translating Earth customs for species who had never even heard of funerals before last week. Officer Riley, Torin's voice came from the doorway. It's time. The memorial hall had been transformed. Instead of the usual white walls, everything was draped in dark blue fabric, the color Earth used to represent the Navy and deep space. 800 candles floated in zero gravity, one for each life lost. At the center, a hologram displayed the Valiant in its full glory, rotating slowly so everyone could see every detail of the ship that saved them. Species who had fought wars against each other for centuries stood side by side. Salth was there, his scales polished and reflecting the candlelight. Morpheus maintained a respectful deep purple color. Trill had brought his entire bridge crew, their mandibles still and quiet. Hundreds of Coalition members filled the hall, all of them silent as Admiral Hayes walked to the center platform. Hayes looked smaller somehow, like the weight of command had physically pressed her down. Her uniform was crisp and perfect, but her eyes were red from crying. She carried a small container, simple metal engraved with Earth's continents. We gather to remember 800 souls who chose duty over survival, Hayes began. Her voice echoed through the hall. Captain Bishop and his crew knew what the kinetic plunge would cost. They had time to refuse, time to find another solution. But they looked at the coalition fleet, saw damaged ships full of wounded warriors from a dozen species, and made a choice that defines humanity. Riley felt fresh tears on her cheeks. Around the hall, she saw similar reactions from species who didn't even cry the same way humans did. A crystalline being was glowing with mournful blue light. A floating jellyfish creature had its tentacles wrapped around itself in a gesture of grief. Hayes opened the container and pulled out a handful of Earth soil. This dirt comes from 800 different places on Earth. Each crew member's family sent soil from their home so we could honor them together. In human tradition, we return to the Earth after death. But space is our home now too, so we'll send them to the stars. She released the soil, and in zero gravity, it scattered into a cloud of brown and black particles. Each speck caught the candlelight, creating a small constellation that drifted through the hall. Coalition members reached out to touch the floating soil, letting it pass through their fingers, tentacles, or whatever appendages they possessed. Torin stepped forward, his 4 arms spread wide. I speak for the coalition when I say we failed humanity. We dismissed your people as weak. We mocked your caution. We celebrated victory while you saw the storm approaching. And when the storm came, you didn't abandon us. You stood between us and destruction. His voice cracked, a sound Riley had never heard from the proud admiral. Captain Bishop and his crew are heroes in every language spoken across the coalition. Their sacrifice will be taught to our children and their children's children. Never again will we underestimate Earth. Never again will we forget what humanity gave for strangers they barely knew. Salth moved forward next, his movements slow and reverent. My battle group survived because the Dreadnoughts pulled us from certain death. I mocked humans for hiding their strength. I was wrong. What I saw as cowardice was actually wisdom. What I saw as weakness was actually restraint. He looked directly at Hayes. My people have a saying, the strongest warrior is the one who knows when not to fight. Humans understand this better than any species I've met. More coalition members came forward, each sharing their own stories of the battle, of the moments when Earth's dreadnoughts saved their lives. A young pilot from Morpheus species talked about how a dreadnought had used its own hull as a shield to protect his damaged fighter. A medical officer described how Earth crews shared their supplies when coalition medicine ran out. Riley watched Hayes accept each testimony with quiet dignity, but she could see the pain in the admiral's eyes. These words of praise and honor meant something, but they couldn't bring back the 800 people who died. When the testimonies finished, Hayes stepped forward again. Captain Bishop's final words were about duty and love. He said to tell his family he loved them. He said to tell Earth Command the Dreadnoughts performed perfectly. She paused, her voice thick. But there was something else he said in his private log, which his family gave me permission to share. Hayes pulled up a hologram, and Bishop's face appeared, worn and tired but smiling. He was recording from the Valiant's bridge, alone, as the ship accelerated toward its final destination. "If you're watching this, I'm gone," Bishop's recorded voice said. "I want everyone to know I didn't die afraid. I died doing exactly what I trained for, protecting people who needed protection. Earth built these dreadnoughts because we learned a hard lesson in our history. The strong have a responsibility to shield the weak, not to rule them, not to control them, but to stand between them and whatever darkness comes." He looked directly at the camera, his eyes bright with certainty. "To my crew, thank you for trusting me. To my family, I love you more than words can say. And to the coalition, welcome to humanity's protection. We're not the biggest species in the galaxy. We're not the oldest or the smartest, but we're here and we're not going anywhere, because that's what humans do. We protect what matters." The recording ended, and the hall fell into complete silence. Riley saw species from across the galaxy openly weeping, expressing grief in hundreds of different ways. Even Torin, who had led armies and commanded fleets for decades, was crying. Hayes released the rest of the Earth soil into zero gravity, creating a swirling cloud that filled the entire hall. "We commit these souls to the stars. May they find peace in the infinite dark, and may we honor their sacrifice by being worthy of it." The candles slowly extinguished, one by one, until only the hologram of the Valiant remained. Spinning slowly in the darkness, Riley thought about everything that changed in just 1 week. The Coalition had learned humanity wasn't weak. Earth had revealed its true strength, and 800 people had died, proving that courage wasn't about technology or weapons. It was about choosing to stand when you could run. Outside the observation windows, stars shone across the endless black. Somewhere in that infinity, particles of Earth drifted among the debris, mixing with the remains of Coalition ships and swarm vessels. Different species, different origins, but united in death just as they'd been united in the final battle. Riley wondered if Bishop knew, in those last seconds before impact, how much he would change the galaxy, how his sacrifice would transform humanity from dismissed newcomers into the Coalition's shield. She liked to think he did know, and that he smiled. 2 weeks after the memorial, Riley stood in the Coalition Council chambers for the first time. The room was enormous, built to accommodate species of all sizes and environmental needs. Torin sat in a pool of water heated to his species' preference. Morpheus floated in a specially pressurized gas column. Representatives from 47 different species filled the chamber, all of them waiting to hear what Earth would say. Admiral Hayes stood at the speaker's podium, looking small against the massive architecture around her, but her voice carried clearly through the translation systems. "The Coalition Council has offered Earth full membership and a seat on the military directorate. We accept with gratitude and one condition." Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. Conditions were unusual in Coalition politics. Most species were simply honored to be accepted. "Earth will share Dreadnought technology," Hayes continued, "but only with species committed to defensive warfare. We won't provide weapons to empires seeking expansion or conquest. The Dreadnoughts were built to protect, not to invade." Salth raised one clawed hand. "How will Earth determine who receives this technology?" "Joint evaluation teams, human engineers working with Coalition ethics committees, will assess each request individually, considering the species' history, current conflicts, and stated intentions." Hayes pulled up a hologram showing detailed Dreadnought schematics. "This technology represents decades of human research and resource investment. We're willing to share it, but only with those who share our values." A reptilian representative named Garth stood, his purple scales gleaming. "Some might see this as Earth holding power over the Coalition, controlling who gets advanced weapons." "Some might see it that way," Hayes agreed calmly. "But Earth learned from watching galactic history. Advanced weapons in the wrong hands lead to suffering. We'd rather be accused of caution than blamed for enabling atrocities." Torin rose from his heated pool, water streaming off his silver scales. "The council should vote, but first I want to say something." He looked around the chamber. 2 weeks ago I thought humanity was weak. I thought their restraint was cowardice and their caution was fear. I was completely wrong." He activated a hologram showing the battle, the moment when the Valiant began its final approach. "Earth hid the Dreadnoughts because revealing your full strength too early starts wars. You studied the swarm for months before committing your forces, because deploying unknown assets into unknown situations is wasteful. And you sacrificed 800 lives without hesitation, because protecting others mattered more than preserving your own people." The chamber fell silent as everyone watched the Valiant's impact replay in slow motion. The expanding sphere of fusion fire, the command ship disintegrating, the swarm fleet falling apart. "That's not weakness," Torin continued. "That's discipline, that's strategy, that's what military power looks like when guided by wisdom instead of pride." He turned to Hayes. "Earth's condition is not about control, it's about responsibility, And if more species approached warfare with that mindset, maybe we wouldn't need weapons like the Dreadnoughts at all. The vote was unanimous. Earth became a full coalition member with complete military directorate authority. But Riley noticed something interesting during the celebration that followed. Species who had barely acknowledged humans before were now seeking them out, asking questions about Earth's history and philosophy. A young crystalline being approached Riley, glowing with curious yellow light. "I've been reading about your planet. The environmental pressures, the extreme weather, the tectonic activity. How did your species survive long enough to develop technology?" Riley thought about Earth, about hurricanes and earthquakes and ice ages and volcanic eruptions. "We adapted. We learned to prepare for disasters before they happened. We developed contingency plans and mutual aid networks. Earth is beautiful, but it's also harsh. It taught us that survival depends on helping each other." Is that why humans built the Dreadnoughts in secret? Preparation for disasters? Partially, but also because Earth's history includes a lot of conflict between human groups. We learned hard lessons about revealing your capabilities too early. Show all your weapons before you understand the situation, and you either start wars you don't want or lose the wars you need to fight. The being pulsed thoughtful orange. So the Dreadnoughts represent human philosophy. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and protect those who can't protect themselves. Exactly, Riley smiled. Earth isn't the strongest planet in the galaxy. We're not the most advanced, but we're survivors, and we understand that real strength is knowing when not to use your power. Admiral Hayes found Riley later that evening, standing at an observation window watching the remaining Dreadnoughts perform formation drills. The massive ships moved through space with surprising grace, their gray hulls reflecting starlight. "The Coalition wants us to build 20 more Dreadnoughts," Hayes said quietly. "Full funding, complete resource support. They're calling it the Valiant Program." Riley felt her throat tighten. Bishop would have liked that, his ship becoming the symbol for galactic defense. He would have hated the attention, Hayes corrected with a sad smile. But he would have loved the mission. 20 more Dreadnoughts means 20 more shields for species that need protection. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the ships dance among the stars. Riley thought about everything that changed since she sent that first transmission 3 weeks ago. Humanity went from dismissed newcomers to the Coalition's primary defenders. Earth's secret fleet was now the galaxy's hope against future threats, and 800 names were carved into history as heroes who proved humanity's worth. "Hayes, do you think the swarm is really gone?" "Our long-range probes haven't detected any more activity in the dead systems, but we're keeping the Dreadnoughts ready just in case." Hayes glanced at Riley. "That's another lesson Earth learned. Hope for peace, but prepare for war." Salth joined them at the window, his movements slower and more respectful than before. "Admiral Hayes, my government wants to commission a statue of Captain Bishop for our homeworld. We thought it appropriate, since his sacrifice saved millions of my people. I'll send you his family's contact information. They should be involved in any memorials." Hayes paused. "Salth, can I ask you something? You mocked humanity during our first meeting. What changed?" Salth was quiet for a long moment, his scales shifting through colors. "I believed strength meant being willing to show your power immediately. I thought restraint was fear, but watching the Valiant's final approach, watching Bishop choose certain death to save strangers, I understood real courage." He looked at Hayes directly. "My species has legends about ancient warriors who valued honor above survival. We thought those were just stories. Humans proved they're real." More Coalition members approached throughout the evening, each one wanting to meet the human representatives, asking about Earth, requesting information about human history and culture. Riley realized that humanity had become something unexpected. Not conquerors or merchants or diplomats. They'd become protectors, the species others looked to when darkness threatened. Later, alone in her quarters, Riley pulled up the message board Earth Command maintained for Coalition members. Thousands of posts from dozens of species, all talking about the battle, about the Dreadnoughts, about humanity's sacrifice. She read through them, seeing humanity described in ways she'd never imagined. The quiet ones from the blue planet. The species that prepares in darkness and fights in light. The protectors who ask nothing in return. One post caught her attention, written by a young pilot whose fighter had been shielded by a dreadnought during the battle. I used to think humanity was boring. They didn't brag about their strength or boast about their victories. They just quietly did their jobs. Now I understand. They weren't boring. They were professional. They were disciplined. They were exactly what warriors should be. Riley looked out her viewport at the stars beyond, at the infinite dark where Bishop and his crew drifted among the cosmos. She thought about how one species, one planet, one ship had changed everything. How 800 lives had purchased respect and trust that no amount of diplomacy could have achieved. Earth wasn't the biggest player in galactic politics. They weren't the oldest civilization or the most advanced, but they'd earned something more valuable than power or prestige. They'd earned trust, and in a galaxy full of different species with different values, trust was worth more than any weapon. Outside her window, the Dreadnoughts continued their patrol, gray mountains floating through space, watching for threats, ready to defend species they'd only just met, because that's what humans did. They protected what mattered. They stood between the darkness and the light, and they never, ever abandoned those who needed them. Riley whispered to the stars, to the memory of Bishop and his crew, "We'll honor your sacrifice. Every day, every decision, every life we save. We'll make sure you didn't die for nothing." And somewhere in the infinite dark, carried on solar winds and cosmic dust, particles of Earth soil drifted among the stars, mixing with the galaxy itself, a permanent reminder that humanity had joined the cosmos not as conquerors, but as guardians.